Welcome, everybody. This is Buck Joffrey with Consensus Network. And today I want to remind you that if you're enjoying the show and you want to get involved, make sure to go to consensusnetwork.io and check out the tutorials. And that'll give you an opportunity to go ahead and maybe even start buying a little bit of cryptocurrency. I think timing is still pretty good. There's a lot of great news, which you'll hear about later on in the week. I just can't see this market staying as it's sideways for long. So anyway, I recommend you go to consensusnetwork.io and check out some of the resources that we have there for that. Also, I just want to point out that there's still an opportunity to ask your own questions. Make sure you go to consensusnetwork.io. And I prefer recording commercials, although most people seem sort of shy about that, which you can do on that site. Or you could also just send me an email, info@consensusnetwork.io. Now, as for today's show, we've spent the first few episodes here. Hopefully you've been listening to get you acclimated, to the concepts and terms around distributed ledger technology like Bitcoin, blockchain, smart contracts. What the heck are all these things anyway? And so I'm trying to get everybody caught up, and hopefully, especially the last couple conversations we've had, with Tika Tawari and Don Vase and all that. This has been very useful to you, and that you're starting to feel like you're building on something. But this week, I want to start getting into some more of the practical stuff, right? Again, if you haven't listened to the first few podcasts, I encourage you to do so. But this week you're going to learn about how this extraordinary technology of distributed ledger technology, in this case blockchain, can be used and to create efficiencies in areas that you might not even know exist, and what a big deal that is. And one of those industries is gaming. Now, you may not be a gamer. I'm certainly not a gamer. I'm about as far away from being an online gamer as you can be. But I was surprised to learn that this gaming industry is much bigger than Hollywood. Right? I mean, this is a humongous industry, and it's global. Anyway, as an investor, therefore, you should be paying attention to this space when it comes to cryptocurrency applications. I certainly am. And today, you're going to learn about my personal favorite project in this arena. It's a project called Worldwide Asset Exchange, aka WAX. Disclaimer here, I guess, I don't know, but I am invested. Just like anybody else, I'm not. I own a fair amount of WAX token because I like the project. So I'll give you that disclaimer. But when we come back, it's an opportunity to talk and listen to somebody who I think is very, very smart, by the name of Malcolm CasSelle, who is president of WAX Token. Now, there isn't much more exciting than cryptocurrency, but there are old-fashioned ways of creating wealth outside of Wall Street that have been used by the wealthiest families in the world for generations. And that's what my other podcast is all about. It's called Wealth Formula Podcast. Now, if you've made a lot of money in crypto and don't know what to do next, this show might actually answer a lot of those questions too. Again, it's Wealth Formula Podcast with me, Buck Joffrey. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, my guest is Malcolm CasSelle. Malcolm, he's an entrepreneur, and he's the CIO of Opskins, which we'll get into, and the president of Worldwide Asset Exchange, or WAX. Prior to his current position, he served in numerous roles internationally as an entrepreneur. He's held multiple C-level positions in startups and highly successful companies in the technology space. And he's also been an active early-stage investor in companies like Facebook, Zynga, and most recently, Bitcoin-related companies, which will be appropriate to what we're talking about today. Malcolm.
Hi, thanks for having me, Buck.
And so what I wanted to do a little bit is sort of back up and talk about Opskins and what that is and how you got involved, and then kind of ease into that and then discussing some of the challenges with that business
and go into kind of what you guys are doing right now. So why don't you get started just telling us a little bit? I mean, you're obviously a guy who's been in the tech space for a while. You're an MIT, Stanford guy. You got tech written all over you. How'd you get into the ops? What is Opskins and how did you get into it?
Sure. So Opskins is the largest marketplace in the world for people who want to buy and sell virtual items from video games. So for those of you who are not video game players, just to give some context, the video game industry is about $130 billion industry, so 13 times bigger than the film industry. Okay, so it's huge. And about 80% of the revenue generated in the video game industry is selling virtual items. So when people acquire those items, they have some value, some residual value. Sometimes that value increases over time, like any collectible would. And they want to buy and sell them. And we are the Amazon of that ecosystem. So when people want to buy and sell those items for cash, they come to us and they use Opskins. So that's what we do. My background really started in commerce and online businesses starting back in the first .com. I got involved in the video game ecosystem in 2011, and I worked on a project called Xfire, which was a social platform for hardcore video gamers, similar to the audience we have today. These are the PC gamers. They are the ones who spend a lot on these rigs. They have like really expensive, monitors and chairs and headphones, kind of like the kind you have. They're not just your casual mobile gamer. These are the ones who are really, really passionate about it. And so I started working with some of the team members here. At that time, I also got involved in crypto. So I started investing in crypto businesses back in 2011, 2012, 2013. And so I started really seeing how this ecosystem was evolving. Right. And it was clear, even years ago, that a peer-to-peer decentralized platform was going to win over a centralized one. And
Before we get into that, though,
we can explain that.
I want to back up a little bit, because one of the things I think keys to understanding why this is such a big deal potentially for investors to look at as a space is understanding this world that I think is foreign to most of us 40-something professional guys, which is the idea that their virtual items have a real value to them. Give us some examples of that. And because I think a lot of people, and of course I know a little bit about it, but give us some examples that show that people really believe that these things that they're buying on the internet have great value and they're willing to pay a lot of money for them.
Yeah, so earlier this year, we sold a skin. And just to clarify, a skin is a virtual item that has no function. It just changes the look. So we call them cosmetic. And so imagine, if you had a Snapchat filter, right? And maybe if your listeners are familiar, and you use the Snapchat filter, it changes your face, right? And that's called a skin, or changes the environment, right? Puts sparkles in it or rainbows and so forth. So that's called a cosmetic item. It doesn't change your voice. Well, it could, but in most cases, it doesn't change your voice, doesn't change the content other than the look. And so cosmetic items are what we specialize in, and we sold a cosmetic item for $61,000 recently.
So all that does, in effect, is like, so, it might be the way a player character looks on the screen. So
yeah. And so
reality than most of us live in.
Yeah. I mean, if you have an avatar in an environment and you want the avatar to look a certain way, well, then of course, you would buy a skin, right, for that avatar.
Right. So, and the reason I emphasize that so much is to get your arms around this, you have to understand, I think, that this generation, particularly that is growing up in this gaming world, that the line between virtual and real is, is not the same line that we think of. Like a lot of us 40-something, professionals, et cetera.
Yeah. So let me just speak to your point. The line between real and virtual, and why that's so important today. So think of it this way. Today, the youth are spending the majority of their time looking at a screen. And on that screen is their identity. It's their social profile, it's their avatar, it's the character they have in a game. And so for that character to be elevated or diminished, it's like the world to them. Okay, yeah. It's just like, we talk about cyber-bullying. And so if somebody posts something negative on your profile, kids will have, really, really a tough time. It turns out if you sit back and you really think about it, you say, well, actually, it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with their identity inside of a virtual environment, which they call a Facebook page.
Right.
Okay? So the reality is that most of us have already made that leap where we actually attach our identity to the thing we have online, our Facebook page online. So if somebody says something about it or comments on it, we take it personally. Okay. So now if you're spending all of your time looking at a screen, you're spending a lot of your time in a virtual environment, whatever happens or occurs for that identity in that virtual environment feels very personal. Right. So this is the brain chemicals. This is oxytocin. This is endorphins. Exactly. This is serotonin. So you feel excited when good things happen. You feel really happy when it's welcomed, when your identity is welcomed. You feel very maybe demoralized when you lose a competition or people's, are saying things, he's not very good at, or he lost and so forth. So people take it very personally. And so these identities are very important to them. And so they will spend whatever resources they have at their disposal to elevate those identities, to feel better. Just like if you live on the Upper East Side in Manhattan and you carry a $40,000 Birkin bag or a $40,000 diamond ring, neither of which have real value at that level. They don't do anything. A bag just,
right.
You could use a shopping bag, or the ring. You don't even need the ring. It doesn't do anything. Yet you'll spend massive amounts of money for those things because it affects your identity, affects how you feel, affects your relationships, your peer group, etc. That's exactly what's happening in a virtual environment. And that transition has already started to occur for the vast majority of us who have even a Facebook profile, let alone play video games.
So these skins that you're talking about, virtual items, or I think you can also put in some of these things. People know a little bit about crypto kitties. They've heard of things like that. They are unique items, right? They're not, there's something about them making you just can't like photocopy them and scan them back in. They're truly unique items, and that's what gives them a certain value. And how do you make sure those things are unique? How do these people do that?
So traditionally, the uniqueness of an item comes from, let's say, the collective belief by a group. So let's say you and I are collecting baseball cards, and you come across a Babe Ruth that's like vintage or mint condition, right? Yeah. We believe, because we've been trading baseball cards, we know about baseball cards for a long time, that item is very rare, and hence the value is high. Okay. In the virtual environment, the uniqueness has traditionally been determined by the game company. The game company says, okay, we have this many items and we're issuing only so many of this particular item, and we deem that this particular item is highly sought after. Now, just because something's rare doesn't mean that it's valuable. It also has to be desirable, right? So you need rarity and you need desirability. When those two things come together, that's when you get something collectible and worth a whole lot, right?
Right.
So this is the same thing as if it was like Star Wars collectibles that we were, exactly, holding on to from the 80s, right? Same thing in terms of rarity and desirability. There may only be like a couple of Chewbacca's, but if nobody wants it, or Jar Jar Binks, nobody wants it, so nobody's gonna, nobody cares. So
now we have this. Now that I think that's an important place to continue this conversation where OpSkins fits in. Because now we know that, okay, well, listen, virtual items to people in this world have the same value as, me buying a car that I covet, something like that. So where do you buy them from each other? And that's where OpSkins comes in, and effectively it's a trading platform. And then inherently,
well, let's make a distinction. Right. Trading and a marketplace are different.
Right.
So trading is, hey, we're going to swap something back and forth, and that could be cashless, right? I could gift something to you. So we offer trading, and it is a free offering. But then we also have a marketplace where you can sell it for cash. And that's a very different thing. When you can sell it for US dollars or euros, you can cash out. That's pretty exciting, right? You have something of value and I can exchange it for money that I can use for anything else.
And you have a global marketplace where,
Yes.
you have somebody in Russia who is trying to sell something to somebody in Korea. And that's where there's a pain point with the currencies, et cetera. How has that been up to now, up to the point of cryptocurrency? How has that been addressed? And if you could talk a little bit about the potential inefficiencies that have been that you guys have seen in that area.
Sure. So when two people are trading who don't know each other, which is the case 99% of the time, there's no trust, right? So you have this Mexican standoff. You have an item I want, I'm willing to pay for it. Who does what first? If I give it to you, you could run off with the money. If you give me the item, I could run off with the item and you don't get paid. So you need an intermediary. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that, items could be stolen, items could be, fake or something. I can talk about sort of fake. Fake is not a huge issue because the game companies is determined, how those things get authenticated. And we've moved that to the blockchain, but we act as the authenticator in the middle just to make sure we double check everything. So if you get an offer, it's a real offer. And then the third thing is that, that currency that's used is really important. So let's say we're trading an item that's 50 cents. Good luck taking an item that's 50 cents and transferring it from Korea to Russia. I mean, by the time you do all the currency conversion and back and forth, let's say it's priced in dollars. That means you got to convert from Korean dollars, Korean won to US dollars, back to ruble. And there's going to be nothing left. So that means that there's no way to transfer something worth 50 cents between these two borders. So that's why you need an intermediary, and that's where crypto plays a role. It means that I can come into the platform, I can trade back and forth instantaneously, I can trade back and forth without those currency conversion costs, and of course, it becomes possible to do items that are 2 cents or $2,000.
Right. So before crypto, there is just sort of this inefficient broker system, right? Can you talk about kind of how that was done?
That's how Opskins. That's how Opskins became so successful. We were the first ones to kind of solve that problem. We were using US dollars as a standard, but we allowed people to upload money from their local currency, and then we allowed them to cash out in their local currency. But they would do that after they had conducted many, many transactions. So the fee would be amortized across a lot of transactions, and it was reasonable, right? If you're trying to do it item by item, it's not even possible.
Right.
But what we had done is we built a centralized system. So that means everyone had to come to Opskins to make it work. Now, inherently, that limits the growth of the business because, people they hang out watching a particular streamer or they're hanging out watching a particular blog. To force them to come to our site to either list their inventory for sale or to buy inventory is just not the way people are used to doing things. People like to be able to buy right where they're consuming things in the way that they're doing it. So if you think about on Facebook, what happens? You can now, do so many things within Facebook that you couldn't do before. You can message right from within Facebook, right?
Right.
And before you'd go to a different program to do that, right? But now people expect it to be embedded into it. So what Wax is simply the ability to do commerce wherever gamers are consuming their gaming content.
Right. So let's just back up real quick. So Wax is it's Worldwide Asset Exchange.
Yes.
And it's a cryptocurrency, right? And
it's more than that. I mean, it's really a blockchain.
Right. Why don't you talk sort of back up on that, because I know there's actually multiple implementations of this. But so you guys decided, instead of saying, well, hey, why don't we just have a marketplace with, Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, and just use cryptocurrencies to actually create another token. And tell me why you decided to do that. And I think you were alluding it to a little bit, people having their own stores and that sort of thing. But talk about the evolution of where Wax token comes in, and in the context of other cryptocurrencies and the larger vision of what you were thinking about in terms of this project.
Sure. Well, I think first we all have to admit that Bitcoin has failed as a payment method, and so has Ethereum. We understand they're too expensive, they're slow, and the fees are variable. So several weeks ago, the fees for transacting in Ethereum went from 50 cents to $50, and nobody noticed. We did,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're running a real business, you'd be screaming if suddenly your toll went from 50 cents to $50 driving to work, right? People would get out of their cars and riot.
Yeah.
Right? Yet nobody did that several weeks ago. Why is that? Because nobody's using Ethereum for anything truly commercial. Nobody cares because these are still experiments in a kitchen somewhere.
Sure.
Okay? So my point is simply that as running a real business, it was clear to us if we don't have our own blockchain, right, to enable these kinds of transactions that we can control and keep those costs low and make the transactions really fast, there was no hope of creating a truly enterprise-based business. And what we've been doing is essentially building a peer-to-peer trading mechanism. So in other words, rather than having to come to Opskins, Wax allows you, say you and I, to trade between the two of us with just this piece of software running in the middle. So when I say decentralized, it really means that people can trade between each other rather than having to go to a centralized authority. And that's the magic of it. Now, it's a token as well, because the token is how you actually pay to do the transactions on that chain. And that's, I think people probably understand that if they have any familiarity with blockchain, that a token is often used to power the platform itself. And so our chain is in alpha. We're already running. We've launched a distributed application called aDAP and a collectible. And that collectible is called Vigo, VGO. And that DAP has become the most transacted DAP in the world virtually overnight. It's way bigger than all the other collectibles like crypto.
Back up and tell us about that, because that's probably going to be, I mean, I think that's an incredibly impressive thing and something that's really important for people to understand. First of all, tell us a little bit more about Vigo, what it is,
Sure.
what people are doing, and how it,
Sure.
How it's making money.
Yeah. So think about collectibles like we were talking about, like crypto kitties. For those who are not familiar, was really just think of them like playing cards, and each one's unique. There were thousands and thousands of them, and it has a cat on it, and a cat with particular characteristics. Maybe it has a mustache, maybe it runs fast, maybe it's tall, maybe it's short, etc. And people started to collect these items. Now, it was mostly speculators. It wasn't a pre-existing ecosystem of people who cared about crypto kitties. When we launched in a partnership with this collectible called Vigo, it was targeted specifically to a market of people who really like CSGO. CSGO is a very popular game called Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It's got a global audience. It's been one of our biggest traded items on Opskins for a long time. And so what they decided to do in support of what I think is also our vision was this idea of an item-centric world. When we say item-centric, most game publishers think, or app developers think everything revolves around the app. And an item-centric view is everything revolves around the user and the ownership of their item. So if you acquire an item, we believe you should own it. It would be like, let's say you bought a car, right? You bought a BMW, and BMW said, sorry, you can't sell that car to anyone else. Or you can only drive it on Tuesdays, you can't drive it on Wednesdays. I mean, they would be absurd, right?
Yeah, right.
So that's why, the game developers are sort of disconnected from the way consumers typically think of things. They've been placing restrictions upon users' ability to do things with the virtual items that they pay for or they earn in the games. And so we believe in a world where there are no restrictions. And that's part of the reason we designed Wax, to enable customers to have the power to trade and do things with them as they wish. And that's why peer-to-peer is so important. When we take ourselves out of the picture as the centralized trader, that means that others can trade and no one can interfere.
Let's talk a little bit about the other side of this, which is, you know, we're talking the other day, and you mentioned something I thought was interesting, and I think maybe this audience would resonate with it. We've drawn this line between this world that we're used to, which is the real world, and then we have this virtual world. But there's also an intersection, and where a pizza, an online pizza, could represent a real pizza, and so having that ability to exchange those types of things online in a peer-to-peer fashion too. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's pretty interesting from it sounds like it's sort of maybe phase 2 in terms of what you guys are doing, but which is a really interesting and exciting kind of way to look at the world as technology continues.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting because right now, when you buy something, you sort of have to consume it when you buy it, right? Like if I buy a pizza, I got to get the pizza right now. And what if I could buy a pizza but consume it later, whenever I wanted? Or I could give it to you and you could consume it whenever you wanted.
Right. Like a gift certificate.
Yeah, but it's instantaneously fungible. And a gift certificate's a pain in the butt, right? Moving a gift certificate around, or even a gift card. Yeah. But imagine that I could buy a pizza, right? And I could send it to you instantly. Say, hey, Buck, thanks for what you did, or I really appreciate that. Or we could trade it. I could trade you the pizza for a bouquet of flowers. Yep. Right? And then you can consume that pizza when you want, how you want, or you could give it to your son, right? And your son can go consume it, or you could give it to your neighbor, right? So it would totally change the dynamics of how we think about consumption. In other words, we'd be able to trade the value of something and consume it later. And we would actually uncouple the idea of having to consume it now and owning it. Now, this is, to some, maybe an abstract concept that seems very, very weird. However, think about what human behavior is like. Think about how we love to collect things. Think about how we love to own things. Think about how we love to trade things.
Yeah.
Look in your garage. How many things do you have in there? Got a lot of stuff probably, right? I know I do.
Right.
So if I said, I'd like to have 10 pizzas just here, just in case, just in case, you never know. Or, I want to have like 14, battery packs that I can consume later. And I can use those anytime I want. They're there. Or I can trade them. This is going to unlock, I think, a completely new industry. And our goal is to be the masters of trading, virtual items that are actually real.
Yeah, and that would be sort of
real items.
Gifting industry is kind of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, because I know at least in gifting, I mean, there's Gifto. Who are the competitors, if there are any competitors to Wax? Largely what I've seen is so far is synergistic relationships with other distributed ledger projects, but I don't know that I've seen anybody who really is doing anything kind of like you. Is there competition, direct competition?
Well, so there are lots of sites creating virtual items. So that's the first thing. So we created Vigo in partnership with a group that came up with it, and we pushed it, through the Wax ecosystem to demonstrate the power of the Wax ecosystem. And as I mentioned before, it's become the most successful collectible in the world. It's generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually, and it's basically brand new, and it's resting upon this idea of skins. Okay, and it's a fantastic business. But we're not in the item creation business. We're in the marketplace business. And so everyone who's creating an item, we want to be the place where that buying and selling occurs. Okay. Right. So if we view anyone who's tokenizing other assets as compatible with this ecosystem. Now, all the guys who are creating assets may be competing with each other, but for us, it's not about who wins. We just want to be the place where whoever is winning gets to transact. In terms of other people building marketplaces, we see some people talking about building marketplaces, but we haven't seen any that have, already the user base, have the scale, and have the depth of understanding about how this ecosystem works. But there are some folks who are trying to do it in collectibles, crypto collectibles. But I think that crypto collectibles are very much a challenged category because most of them rest upon Ethereum. And as we mentioned earlier, Ethereum is, I think, a failed proposition when it comes to running a commercial business on it.
Right. There was this happened when crypto kitties, there was like the big problem with the Ethereum network getting completely clogged up and
Mhm.
all that. It's just not terribly efficient with that regard. One of the things I think is really neat about this whole project, and why I'm a big holder of Wax token myself, because I really, in many ways it makes so much sense to me, is that you are also the biggest, this goes back to Opskins. I mean, you are already sort of the market maker already. And what you're doing is you're creating a currency, and making it just easier to transact. The customers are already there, so it's not a
Mhm.
theoretical project. I mean, do you feel like, to me, that seems like one of the biggest advantages that you have?
Yeah, I think having millions and millions of customers is a huge advantage. I won't discount that at all.
Yeah, right.
But but also having a brand,
Yeah.
right? We have like a 98% trust pilot score, so that means it's like a very, very trusted and valued brand. All those things are great and fantastic. But I think the one thing that is the most important out of all of those things is our understanding of how the customers work. Um, I don't know any other group that could launch a collectible and go to hundreds of millions of dollars overnight. It's just, I've never seen anyone do that. And that's one thing that our group is really good at, because we understand how to work with third parties. We have, hundreds and hundreds of third parties coordinated in making that effort a success, and they're all continuing to grow because we are really a B2B play. We understand how to empower other marketplaces or other sellers or other buyers. So if you go on YouTube, and you'll see thousands and thousands of videos about the things that we do, because we work with influencers very effectively. The items are designed in a way that the collectors really understand. There's appraisers involved. There's other games that are using those items in their games now. So when you think about coordinating all of these pieces to make it successful, it's something that's, I think, a rare combination, and it comes more from, one of the folks on our team invented item trading, okay, in 1997, and built the first successful company, became a multi-billion-dollar company. And so our experience in this goes back to literally the core roots of it. And I think that that's really one of our strategic advantages.
What do you think in terms of timeline? Right now, I know you mentioned, I think you mentioned you're almost there. I mean, we've almost got, there's the token right now, but that's, you're going to launch the new blockchain. People who own the current Wax token are going to get an equivalent amount of that. And then how do you see this evolve in your eyes? How does this sort of catch, it's already caught on, but really start penetrating through that, however big a market you said that, how big is this market? You said it was
So item trading is a $50 billion market. This is the secondary market for trading.
Right.
$50 billion.
So $50 billion dollar market in trading. The goal here is presumably to make this really the central currency, the central, ledger for all of that.
Yeah.
What is it? How far along are you in that journey? And how do you see this all rolling out?
So I think the way to think about what we're doing is our blockchain is designed to create an open platform. So if you can think back to AOL, remember America Online?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a battle of America Online versus the internet. Okay, if you go back even further, it was a battle between proprietary interactive television networks, right, that Microsoft was trying to support, and the internet. And both gave up. Microsoft gave up and said, you know what, forget these two-way cable networks, too expensive, it'll take forever to roll out. We're just going to embrace the internet. What did AOL do? They embraced the internet ultimately. So we believe that open wins over closed. The momentum is just over time, just too strong, and it compounds, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what we're really building is an open platform for items and virtual items. And if you believe virtual items are huge and getting bigger, you say, whoever builds that open platform for virtual items is going to be a huge winner. It's a very, very simple proposition.
If you're an investor, and I know you don't want to talk too much about this, but some people are probably thinking, well, how does Wax, what would make Wax go up in price? If you had a token, is that token supposed to stay constant? Is it supposed to go up? What forces create price changes in that token?
So I can't talk about our own token, and I can't talk about price of our token, but I can talk about token economics in general.
Right.
So I think one of the powerful drivers is you want to have increased demand. So you want an ecosystem that's continually driving greater demand for a token, and then you also want a mechanism that continually reduces supply. Right? So you want increased demand and decreased supply, and you want both of those things happening simultaneously. Now, some token economics I've seen support just one idea, right? Either decreased supply or increased demand. I believe the ideal ones do both.
Right.
So we've designed our ecosystem to address both of those. We talk about it in the white paper. I don't need to get into detail about that, but basically, the more the platform gets used, right? Basically, the less tokens are available. And the more it gets used, those tokens get taken out of circulation by the folks benefiting from the ecosystem. And so for us, we know how to drive demand. We've grown our platform from zero to a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream. And so we know how to build demand. And we've designed the token economics to continually constrain the supply. And that's basically how we've designed the business.
Got it. So if people want to learn more about, I don't know, just everything here, I think, is it wax.io?
Yeah. If you go to wax.io, you can link to our blog there. We have new postings every week about what we're up to, partnerships, and how the business is evolving. We've launched Wax Express Trade, which has been really successful. We've worked with this collectible I mentioned called Vigo, which has been really successful. We have lots of other things. We even talked about trading in real life items, IRL items like sneakers and things like that, which are coming. So in other words, the way it would work is I would buy a token. That token would represent a particular pair of sneakers sitting in a manufacturer. I could then trade that token, sell that token, or consume that token, right? So let's say I traded it with you and you decide to consume that token. You then use it, and that entitles you to a pair of sneakers from that manufacturer, and it gets sent to you directly. Right. So this trading of IRL, of in real life items, is coming. And our blockchain, as I mentioned, is in the alpha. And so it's running all the transactions for Vigo. As I mentioned, it's now the largest tradable item in the world by an order of magnitude. So it's really starting to show the pieces, starting to come into focus. You can start to see the success of collectibles. You can see the success of the chain, even in its early phase. So Q4 is really when you'll start to see all these pieces come together. Wax Express Trade, the trading platform. You'll see more games that will be announced that are on the platform. You'll see more collectibles. All those things will come together. So I think towards the end of the year, we'll really start, the picture will become clear for a lot of people who, we have fans who've been with us from day one who are observing and watching carefully, but then there's a lot of newcomers who are taking a look, and I think they'll see the whole picture as we get towards the end of the year.
Malcolm, thanks a ton for being on the show. This has been really great.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Buck. It's been a real pleasure.
We'll be right back.
Want to buy Bitcoin with your IRA? Don't waste your time on expensive IRA custodians. A strategy called a QRP is as easy as writing a check. Find out how. Text 44222 and type QRP book. That's one word. And get a free book that explains everything. Again, that's 44222 QRP book. One word. It's the easiest way to make Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies part of your retirement. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that show. Obviously, pretty interesting stuff. Whether you're interested specifically in that area or not, you gotta understand why I think this is a big deal. Anyway, it is time now for our audience Q&A. And I would like to remind you that the best way to do this is to go to consensusnetwork.io and record your question. But if you don't want to do that, which it seems so far like not a lot of people were wanting to do that, you can either send an email to info@consensusnetwork.io or, again, go to consensusnetwork.io and you can write your question there as well. So let's start this week. And the first question is from Andy. Andy from Chicago, where I moved from a little bit over a year ago, to Santa Barbara here. So Andy's got a good sort of practical basic question. It's so I hear the word aDAP a lot, and DAP is DAPP. What is aDAP, and is everything in crypto just called aDAP because it's distributed? That's actually a good question. I think it's a fundamental question, and maybe we haven't been very clear on that. But they're really the way to think about what's going on in cryptocurrencies right now is in blockchain and distributed ledgers is that you can broadly separate these cryptocurrencies as representing either a protocol or an application. And in the case of what you're talking about, aDAP is a distributed application. So it's an application that is built on a distributed ledger. A protocol is different. Protocol is what you're going to build it on, right? So protocol is Ethereum. Bitcoin is a protocol, although it's largely for currency purposes. But you also have another one of my more interesting projects is EOS, sort of a next generation type platform. These are all protocols, right? And so you can think of those as the groundwork, the framework, and then aDAP is something that's going to be built on top of that framework. A good example of aDAP, and sort of these are the businesses that are built on top of that, on that layer, on that protocol. So you have to have the layer, you have to have the infrastructure, and then you build businesses on top of it. And the businesses, or whatever they are meant for, are the dApps, the distributed applications. So probably the best known one, you may have heard of this even in the mainstream, is CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties is an application that is built on the Ethereum protocol, and it's an application. So anyway, Ethereum is the protocol there. The application that's being built on there is CryptoKitties. Hopefully that answers your questions. But that distinction is an important one as we move forward, and we'll come back to it over and over again. The next question is from Karen Osborne. Hey Buck, my name is Karen Osborne. I'm just starting cryptocurrency. I keep noticing a lot of platforms ask for a two-step authenticator. What exactly is it? Is it really necessary for me to have it? So Karen, that's a good question. It's not necessarily just related to cryptocurrencies, but I will say that it is a useful thing in cryptocurrencies because, the thing that you don't want to have happen is you get hacked and lose all of your money, lose all of your assets. So if you go to a lot of these exchanges, they'll ask for you to set up your account like you usually do. Then they ask you for a password, and then they give you the option, in most cases, to set up this two-step authentication. The most common app for that, by the way, is Google Authenticator. It's what basically it does is, okay, you put your password in, then it says, okay, now put in this code that Google Authenticator is going to generate for you. So you basically go to Google Authenticator, maybe it's on your phone, you go and look under Coinbase or whatever it is you're trying to find, and then I think it's every maybe 30 seconds or maybe it's 60 seconds, it comes up with a new code, then you have to add that in, and that is just a second layer to make sure it's you. I'm sure there's ways to hack past that as well, but it's certainly a very useful additional layer, especially if you've got a bunch of money sitting on various platforms. You don't want somebody to be able to just get in there simply by getting your password, which is actually probably pretty simple for most sophisticated hackers to figure out. So that's it, pretty much. Now the third question, and I thought this was really interesting. It says, it's from Philip. Hi, Buck. I got lucky enough to get into Bitcoin really early. I thought it was a hobby, but now I have about $5 million in Bitcoin. Last January, it was around 20 million, and I probably should have sold because I'm pretty cash poor. Otherwise, what do you think I should do? Wow, that's a great question. I wish I had your problem. Here's what I would do. And again, I'm not going to give you financial advice. First of all, I think it depends on your situation. Obviously, if you have to sell a little bit to live, then you got to do it, right? But you're going to have to pay capital gains taxes on all this stuff, and that's going to be a pretty significant hit. That's one thing to remember. The other thing is that we're in such a critical period of time right now. I mean, I literally look at next month. You know, you have BAKT, B-A-K-K-T. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this program about how this could make a big deal. You've got the ETF from the Chicago Board of Options Exchange that'll probably get through sometime in 2019. So the longer you can hold, the better. But and so what I would do personally is I would see, okay, I'd give it, say, 3 or 4 months, because some of these major things are going to happen in the next 3 or 4 months, and then see what that does to Bitcoin. And maybe it only gets it to, maybe it gets to 10,000, maybe it doesn't get to 20,000. And at that point, what I would do is seriously consider actually using one of these borrowing platforms. So you can, I'm not going to give you any specific ones, but you can, what you can do is you can basically collateralize. You can go and you can collateralize some of your Bitcoin or other assets that you may have, and you can actually pull out fiat currency. And they're pretty high interest rates. It's true. But the thing is that it's kind of better than selling your Bitcoin. If you've got something that you can potentially, you think that you might be able to make some money on and buy it or whatever, that would certainly be an option. That's what I would do personally. And, I wouldn't necessarily just sell stuff, because you're going to end up paying significant capital gains, and then you may miss out on any additional upside that happens with Bitcoin in particular in the next few years, which I think, in my opinion, again, is going to be substantial. So that's one approach, and probably what I would do if I were you. The other option is to say, hey, wait a few months, and I still would wait at least 2-3 months to see what happens, because we're set at such a critical juncture right now. And then say, hey, you know what? If you're cash poor right now and you're not making a lot of money and you're living it, from paycheck to paycheck, you just take out $1 million. Take out $1 million, pay the capital gains, and if you're already kind of living cash poor, $1 million invested properly in the right things can give you a significant amount of cash flow that you can live off of, and then just, kind of let this stuff ride for a while. Otherwise, I don't think at this point where we are in the market and with all the things that are going, that I would personally ever liquidate. If I was sitting on $5 million of Bitcoin at this point, I think I wouldn't do that personally, but others would disagree. So again, your options are, you're not just your options. There's plenty of options, but the options I would consider is potentially collateralized loans, maybe just enough to live on, whatever. That would be one option. The other, and then presumably, if you collateralize that, you'd invest it in something for cash flow, so you could pay that debt back. So you don't, so you're not just draining your reserves. But then the other option is maybe just taking $1 million. And either way, I would wait a few months, 3 or 4 months, and then take $1 million, liquidate it, pay the tax, invest it in something very cash flowing, and go from there. So those are the options that I would personally look to. I would not liquidate the whole thing right now. I think you're in a very, very good position. You could end up, holding $50 million. That's just crazy to me to think that you would, right now, if you were to sell it all, it would be a little scary to me. I mean, now listen, on the other hand, you could live on $5 million, you could, retire, whatever, but you have an opportunity for some pretty substantial stuff going on. Now, I will use this opportunity, by the way, Philip, to say that if you have that kind of money sitting around, you really ought to be or potential money, you ought to be listening to my other podcast too, which is Wealth Formula Podcast. And I say that because not only because we talk a lot about investing in things that are tax efficient, et cetera, but we also talk about serious, strategies to, decrease the amount of tax you can potentially pay on something. So if you look at, if you go to wealthformula.com and you go under investment opportunities, you can, I would suggest you look at something called conservation easements that are really designed to help you push down your tax as well. So anyway, do that. Check it out. Hopefully that answers your question. And I think that's probably about it for this week. And again, that was a great question. Keep them coming, please. And I'd love to hear from you. Make sure you tell me who you are and not only your name, but it's also helpful to know where you're at. Because in Philip's case, I don't know, it's Philip with 2 L's. I don't even know if you're in the U.S. If you're in the U.S., the situation will be different. If you're in Puerto Rico, you're in much better shape and so on and so forth. But anyway, that's it for me on Consensus Network this week. Make sure you tune in next week. So this is Buck Joffrey signing off.